unmute. So we just have to keep an eye on. Can you accept?
Yeah,
Can I what?
Good to start.
Oh,
Sorry for the technical difficulties, everyone. I think we should be good to go.
Okay. All right, we are ready to go. And I am going to share my screen. I have a short presentation for you. So today's topic is change your habits one tiny step at a time. And we are going to talk about, what are those things that you can do day to day to make sure that you bring about change in your life. Oftentimes, we don't even notice whether it's bad habits that start lurking in or good habits that we want to be intentional about. If we don't pay attention to that, we really don't create that environment for us to be successful. So today we're going to talk about how to do that. So I will be basing this presentation off of a book that I really enjoy. And one of you is actually going to win a copy of this. So we'll see how many people actually show up. And it is called Atomic Habits. I have the English version and I have the Spanish version. And this book, it talks about the word atomic as something extremely small. When we think of atoms, right, they're the smallest unit of matter, the smallest thing that makes up who we are, what our world is. When we talk about habits, a habit is a routine that we perform regularly. Every morning we get up, we brush our teeth. That's a habit, right? It's almost an automatic response to a specific situation. There are things that we do so routinely that we don't even think about. Some of those habits are good, some of those habits are bad. So I mentioned brushing your teeth is one that hopefully is a good habit. But flossing might be a harder habit, right? So actually embrace. And with this, once we embrace or once we learn about atomic plus habits, we're going to work on our mindset. And a mindset is the inclination an inclination or a habit. So this is really bringing it together, the creation of patterns in our lives. So the interesting thing about this is that the more you do something, the more you create a pattern for repetition in your life. And that's very, very important because that's what leads to change, and that's what leads you to get to where you want to go. So why do patterns matter? These patterns or the habits, they make up who we are in our lives. And they can be positive or negative, and also have a positive or negative impact on our lives. Habits determine our actions or the inactions that we take, and they're going to lead you to the results you want to get or the results that you're already getting, and sometimes they may not be the results you want. For example, habits such as snacking every time you go to the kitchen might lead to a result that you might not really want. For example, weight gain. When we have goals, oftentimes people think, someday I want to go and travel to South America, or someday I want to go to Europe. It sounds like a big dream, a pie in the sky, and it's wishful thinking. But when we think about as if I want to become a world traveler, if I want to have this identity, right, what are those tiny habits that one can have? With the idea that we start with small, easy to do activities, right? So perhaps it's traveling to somewhere local and learning how to pack a bag efficiently, right? So all these different tiny changes can lead to that drastic change that we want for the long term. So tiny habits are important because when we have this obsession over a big goal, like I want to be a millionaire or I want to visit all the countries in the world, sometimes we leave it as wishful thinking. I have a 74-year-old mother-in-law who has never gone to Hawaii. And she's like, someday I'll go, someday I'll go. And we finally said, we'll take you. Let's set up all the different things that we need to make sure that you can go and visit Hawaii. But she's been dreaming about it for close to 50 years, and she hasn't really taken the time to actually do it herself. So we're helping her through that. But oftentimes, this ends up in a cycle of dreaming rather than actually doing. When you focus on the habits that you need to create, the dreams will slowly come true, and you won't even notice that they're coming true because it becomes part of who you are, part of the changes that you are making in your identity. So when we build new habits, and I'm gonna share a couple of documents with you. The first one, and let me see, I think I can drop it into, give me one moment. I'm gonna drop it into the chat box, a couple of documents that I have for you. Okay, so the first one is a habit summary sheet of the things we're going to be talking about. And this document you can keep, and as I go through it, you can look at some of the key points. And the Spanish one is called Hábitos. Let me share that real quick. And the last one is Habit Tracker. So you're going to get 3 documents, one in Spanish, one in English, and the Habit Tracker I left in English because it's a very simple document. I'm going to go back to share. Okay, so when we build new habits, we need to have 4 different, we call them laws, okay? So, or really points, right? This one's for you and this one's for him. Okay, sorry about that. There's an English one. Do you want the English one too? Or just the Spanish one? So the first thing is, the first law is the cue. You gotta make the habit obvious. It has to be in front of you, ready to see. And so one of the activities that we're gonna do today is we're gonna think about your day and you're gonna write down all the things that you did that you consider habits. And then we're going to label them as good habits or bad habits. So the first thing is you got to make it obvious. The second law is you have to make it attractive. And this is the desire for you to want to do and take action on whatever it is that you want to change. You also have to be surrounded by the people that are doing whatever action that is. So if you're trying to lose weight, for example, you're not going to go and hang out with people who eat pizza all day long, right? So you have to surround yourself with the people who are showing the behavior that you want to exhibit. Same thing with your family as well, to really share that with them. Another way to make it attractive is to create it a ritual, to make it part of, you know, what you do every day as just part of who you are, that identity shift, right? The third law is to make it easy and to create a response. You know, you want to reduce the friction and look at the steps. How many steps does it take you to do that habit? And can you reduce it to make it as easy as possible, right? So if you're trying to, I know Brad mentioned meditating the other day, it's like to make it as easy as possible, it's like I have to get up and sit on my bed and I meditate, right? If you have to go to a different place, if you have to drive somewhere, you're already adding complications that make it less likely that you're actually going to follow through. You have to also design the environment to say, hey, this environment, this is where I'm going to create that habit, and all the conditions that are necessary. So for example, if you want to drink a cup of tea instead of a cup of coffee every day, you would want to leave out your tea and right next to the tea kettle to be able to make it as easy as possible. Oftentimes, when a habit is so ingrained, where you are just so used to doing something, the best way to actually tackle it is to cut back. So a really good example is with sugar. I had an addiction to sugar completely. If you asked me a year ago if I could give up sugar, I would have said, no way, no how. Sugar is what I do. Like, it is part of my life. And so what I did was I started implementing, instead of the 2-minute rule, I started implementing a fraction rule, where I used to put 4 sugar packets on my coffee every day. So then I went to 3.5, and then I went to 3, and then I went down to 2 packets, and then I went down to 1 packet, and then I switched over to Splenda because I thought I still need a little sugar. So then 2 packets of Splenda became 1.5, and then it became 1, and then it became half a packet, and now I no longer use any type of sugar in any of my drinks, which is fascinating because a year ago, I would have never even dreamt that I could actually achieve that. But it goes back to that, to making as easy as possible to be able to cut back just a tiny bit at a time. And then I made it automatic, looking at, what are the things that could find my brain to say, let's do it. We got this down. It's not something I have to think about. And then the fourth law is to make it satisfying, so to use reinforcement to say you're doing a great job. And part of this was, for me, my reward was that I actually started losing weight just automatically from cutting sugar back. And I thought, oh my goodness, just from sugar alone, I was able to lose 12 pounds just from cutting sugar. And then I cut flour and, just started modifying my diet and then working on my mindset. So when I would not do what I was supposed to do, I wouldn't say, oh, well, too bad, I'm going to start on Monday again. I would actually jump right back on it. My next cup of coffee, I'm going to continue with where I was. So I never said, oh, I'm being bad, or I said I'll never be able to cut this sugar back. It was just really saying, you know what? It's okay. We're human. And I would pick up right where I was. It was one of those things where I never actually gave myself, a punishment or something like that. So another way that people really enjoy seeing those changes are through a habit tracker. And this is the other document that I included. And so we're going to do a quick activity and with this tracker for you to just list all the habits. And they're going to be good and bad habits, but I'll go through the positives, how to create a new habit first. And then we're going to go through the negative, how to get rid of a habit with the very similar pattern. And so, so just to wrap that section up is when you make it satisfying is you don't treat yourself as if you did something wrong. You just jump back in. The moment you make a mistake, you say, it's okay. It's not a mistake. It's just where I am. And next time I'm going to do better. So that's really how to create a good habit. The 4 steps for your brain to start thinking, okay, this is something I want to do. This is something that I'm going to commit to, making it really attractive. You're going to make it easy, and you're going to make it satisfying. So there are, and for, I guess the sugar example was actually how I broke an old habit. If I look at the new habit was actually drinking coffee without sugar, right? So to break the old habit, I was mentioning it to you, little by little, it became invisible, the sugar, because I was cutting back little by little, right? You reduce the exposure by actually removing the cues of the bad habits from the environment itself. And at the beginning, it might be important, for example, if you are trying to lose weight, to remove all those snacks, but eventually you want to get to the point where it's okay if there's snacks around, you're just not going to eat them, right? And so that's really the mind work that I was mentioning earlier. For the inversion of the second law is make it unattractive. Looking at reframing the way you think and highlighting the benefits that you will get by avoiding your bad habit. For me, it became weight loss. The benefit was that. The third law is to make it difficult. The inverse of this is that you make it as hard as possible. So that means that for my sugar, I would have to put it in a different room, right? I would have to lock it up in the pantry or something like that, where I would actually have to go back and pull it out and really create that awareness that, do I really want to continue doing this or not? Also, some people use commitment devices. They'll actually track. I didn't do that for that particular example. And then the fourth one is to make it unsatisfying. Oftentimes if you share with a buddy, that you're working on a behavior, whether it's trying to get rid of a behavior, an accountability partner might remind you or might say, hey, if you do this, you have to give me $1 or something like that, right? Just looking at a way to make it very unattractive because it's going to be just painful on your wallet. Some people find that creating a habit contract where if they don't do something by a certain time, they have to pay somebody $50 or $100 or whatever that is. They find that that's, that works for them. I haven't had to do that yet, but I know that is very common. As a matter of fact, there's actually an app that will bet if you lose a certain amount of weight, they'll give you a certain amount of money because they know how hard it is for people to change their mindset. So it's like gambling. They actually win because most people can't break these old habits. So the chances of you actually coming through with that are very slim. So they actually make a lot of money off of that. Okay, so we're going to open it up for a little discussion. Okay, so we're going to do good habits. We're going to help, just hypothetically speaking, and we can actually come up with something if you want to share something that you're trying to do. Instead of these hypothetical situations, we can just talk about your situation. But we have Juan here, and he wants to write a book. So we're going to think about, you're going to find, we can open up the discussion for anybody, but Juan wants to write a book. So if we talk about micro habits or tiny habits, right, atomic habits, what does Juan need to do today and tomorrow to get to this big picture idea of somebody writing a book? What do y'all think? Anthony, can you resend the invitations? Somebody's asking for Four Corners to rejoin as panelists.
From
that screen. I'm going to stop share real quick. Okay. So if a person wants to write a book, what are some examples of habits that this person could start working on today and tomorrow? Yeah, but Sandra, writing a book is a lot, right? I'm not going to just imagine this book has how many pages? And I have never written a book. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that. I have written a book. 306 pages, okay? So most people won't write a book just because of that, because it's hundreds and hundreds of pages, right? Most everyday people. And Juan is an everyday person. How can we get Juan to actually write a book? What do you think?
So when, like in 2014, I wrote a book and it was really hard because I had a lot of things to do. But so the habit that I got then, it was a poetry book. So I started writing 1 hour for 1 hour for 1 hour for not 1 hour. So I already had a lot of poems, but just to get him into a book, it took me like 5 months. But that's something I decided to do, to write 1 hour each day, and it did help me a lot.
Sandra, were you able to just jump in and write for an hour, or did you have to start a little bit smaller? Tell us more.
So then, the first thing that I decided to write a book, it was because in 2014, I was part of this group where there was writers, authors, poets, whatever, and they would make fun of me because my Spanish wasn't really good. My writing wasn't really good. It was really bad, like bad. Even though my English is not that good, my English is better writing it, but the Spanish, it was really bad. So that's when I decided to do the book. So White Poet, I started writing poems. And so, I don't know, I think it was easy for me because I get it inspired really fast. So I have a lot of stories. So I don't know which steps I did because everything came. It was very easy for me to get inspired and writing that whole hour. But with kids, I mean, sometimes it's hard. So I guess mostly was stay 1 hour away from my kids so I can write for that hour.
How did you make it obvious to yourself that you had to write for 1 hour every day?
I had to put a timer because
Put a
I'm really
timer?
bad. Yeah, I'm really bad at tracking my time and sometimes my days and dates
Mm-hmm.
and everything. So I always have to use timers and agendas. And even though I have them, I sometimes don't even look at my agenda or don't even look at my timers or anything. So that's I think that's one of my bad habits, that even though I put everything down, sometimes I forget to see them.
You actually forget to take in, right? So that's another thing, you know, in terms of making it obvious, right? Is how do you make it attractive? How do you make it something you want to do, right? Did you feel a sense of satisfaction every time you wrote a poem, like after that 1 hour?
Yeah, because I had a goal to finish that book in 5 months, just because I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
show that I did have a book and I did had to know write Spanish, but then I was very disappointing because it was really bad. But I did it. So the point is that I really did it. And I really felt really happy with myself because I knew I did it, even though it wasn't perfect. I felt good with myself that I did have that compromise of putting 1 hour a day to do a poem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about for the people who have this idea that someday they can write a book, but they're not at the level of writing 1 hour a day? Where do you think they could start?
I think it has to, I mean, they have to believe themselves that they can do it. Because sometimes it's like really, really hard because we don't believe in ourselves that we're gonna be able to do it. But I think starting to believe in themselves that they can really write in 1 hour. And I know some writers, they like write all day, but because that's the only thing they do all day, you know, that's their job, or I don't know. But for someone that has a lot of things going on and being able to have 1 hour at least to write, I mean, I think that's a start, and believing
Mm-hmm.
in
I think I'm
themselves.
gonna. Oh yeah, go. Yeah, no, I was gonna suggest the Brad's 5 minute, 5 minute idea for writing. If a person does not have that 1 hour yet, you start with 5 minutes, and it's like in 5 minutes I'm gonna write 50 words, right? Whatever that is. And that's the idea behind an atomic habit or a tiny habit, is that you got to start somewhere, right? So things that come up in community, right, or in our families, what are some of those habits that are relevant to this conversation? What do you think? Things that are, whether in the office or whether it's at home with your family or in the general community, what are some of these habits that we could, or the atomic habits, little tiny habits that we could take on to make a big difference in our community? What do you think that could be?
In the community, it depends what you want to do in the
Mhm.
community. Like if you want to do outreach, then you do outreach to 5 residents, or to your neighbors or your family when you want to do outreach, or have a survey or questions. Because sometimes we want to do a lot in one day. And I think that's what makes
Mhm.
us very exhausted and tired and bored, and we don't want to do it anymore because we want to do, and I'm saying because I've done that before, that I always said, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes, then I want to do everything that day, and it gets really overwhelming, exhausting, because I left all those days without doing it. So now I'm getting into the habit that I need to do little steps, and just start.
Mhm.
Because if I never start, then nothing's gonna happen. So just taking the step to start, and with little steps, I mean, it's gonna take you there. And that's something that I've been learning myself, because yeah, I had very bad habits of that bad habit of saying, I'll do it tomorrow. I have time tomorrow, later, tomorrow, later, tomorrow, later. And then that day
I mean, you
came,
don't do it, right?
and it was, I mean, it's exciting. And I feel like it was very exciting to do everything on that day that it was due, if it was a project or whatever. And I was very excited because I did it, but it was very exhausting. And I was like, no, and I did that several times.
So one thing that has come up with community, right, and you mentioned this right now, is if we, or if you, or anybody in this room reaches out to one person per day, every day of the week, for one entire year, okay, how many people do you think that might be? Just one person.
365.
I mean, we know there's 365 days in a year, right? But we're not working on weekends, maybe, right? I'd give yourself 2 days of grace. But how many, if we do 5 days a week, right, times 52, it's 260 people. One person outreach per day, okay? If we do what you suggested, times 5, that's 1,300 people per year, per person, right? And with a team of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, let's say 5 people, right? 6,500 people in 1 year. Isn't that fascinating? One person, starting with one person, right? Increasing it to 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a micro habit, right? That little tiny habit that that we can put as a community, support, where that is one true reach to a resident, to a business, whatever that is, right? 6,500 with a team of 5 people. Isn't that fascinating? That's half of the residents in these 3 communities. Which is why this is so powerful, right? And there are so many different ideas. All of you have different ideas of the things that you can actually navigate and do, right? So what we're gonna do is, because I brought these hypothetical examples just to give you kind of a rundown, but I want you to, I'm gonna share these. I want you to think about, let me do a stop share real quick. Okay, we're gonna do an activity right now, and I want you to make a list of the habits. Think of your day, right? And think of that long-term goal that kind of coupled with, like, for example, if you want more community engagement, what do you have to do? What are the good habits that you have right now that can help you get to that? What are the bad habits that are not getting you to that goal? If you want to travel, that's okay. You can use that as a goal. I'm not, necessarily telling you that you have to pick one or the other. So what I want you to do is I want you to take this sheet, okay, which is called a habit tracker, and I put the link in the chat box. And I want you to think about which habits you want to build and which habits you want to break. Now, to really center it, because there's 1,000 things we could list, right? I like to put a goal, like what is it that you're trying to achieve? So for me, in the past 7 months, it's been weight loss, right? So if I put weight loss here, what are the habits that are helping me? What are the habits that are not helping me? And then I would list them down. But you can just do a general, like, think through the whole day and what it is that you do and do that as well. I just think it's helpful to have an end in mind, because then you can really think about those things. So if you think about, Anthony, you were swimming, right, for the goal setting one?
Which I did this morning.
You did this morning. Tell us more about that, like how, because technically you have been using micro habits. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I set a goal of March 30th of 2023 to be an avid swimmer. And so I've broken it down by, so in the month of October that I wanted to get to the pool twice. Mm-hmm. And now in the month of November that I want to get there 3 times. Mm-hmm. And then I want to increase the time I spend from 30 minutes to 45 minutes.
Okay, so notice that's all micro habits, right? A little bit larger scale than the 5 minutes because you're already there, right? But for somebody who has never swam before, 5 minutes would be like the place to start. So So you can already see how you use this in everyday life. And the intentionality comes into advancing the things that are not working in our lives, and making that a little bit better, right? And then looking at the habits that are holding us back from achieving the goals we want and cutting back on those, right? So if you think about, you know, what habits do you want to build, and then what habits do you want to break, we can kind of start listing these ideas and then really seeing, and the way the tracker works is you're going to track them. Like, do you do it or do you not do it, right, over time? And so you can even divide this sheet in half and put the positive habits on the top and the negative habits on the bottom. And then every time you stay away from, you know, for me, it was the sugar packs, right? You give yourself a little check mark, whatever that is, and then you can track, okay, I did not eat sugar for the past 30 days, right? And then that's something that you can actually look at. But for now, let's take just a couple of minutes to set a goal on top if you want, to say, what is it that you want to be better at? For you, it's being an avid swimmer, right? For somebody else, it might be writing a book, right? For somebody else, it might be, hey, we want to have 50% of the GS community engaged in one way or another by the end of next year. Wouldn't that be awesome, right? So what do we got to do? What habits do we need to create, and what habits do we need to break to make that happen, okay? So pick your goal with the idea.
Question. I like this, your goal about, you know, reaching out to one person per day for the next year, but what does that look like? I mean, is that coffee? Is that a conversation? Is that a meet?
You can make it however you want. Because right now, if you say, you might not start from one, you already have a lot of connections, right? But it might be develop a weekly or schedule a weekly coffee, schedule a weekly call where you have 5 actions to meet those 5 people, but they don't all have to look the same. Right? You see that? So, but it might just picking up the phone and calling somebody, right, to say, every day I'm going to start with a phone call to the community. It's a habit. You're going to track it over time, right? Every month, I'm going to reach out to 20 people or 25 people, whatever that is, right? So they're like little micro goals, if you look at it that way, right? Because the habit is you do it so much that it becomes part of your nature. It becomes part of what you do, and you almost like can't even do something else because you have to do this first, like brushing your teeth, right? That's the example that we want to use, because I can't leave my house without brushing my teeth. Like, I feel like there's something growing, like, literally inside my mouth, right? So the same thing with whatever habit that is what do you need to do? Or, for example, you can't have your cup of coffee in the office until you do this, right? And then you know that that's a nice reward. You like your cup of coffee, but, you know, whatever that is. And that's how you couple it with these laws. I don't know what else to call them. More of the 4 steps, I guess, where you're going to use this to make these happen, right? Okay, so we'll take a couple of minutes. Are there any questions from the group online? And we're looking at the documents. We're going to be working with this document. Okay. Yeah, oh, sorry, there's pens right here. Okay, so
I like the idea of creating a reward or something like that, because I noticed my effort to create a habit of doing some exercise every morning and meditating every morning. My habit is that I get up and I go make a cup of coffee. That's the first thing I do. Every day of my life is what I do. And so I on the days when I meditate and exercise first, one, I get it done, it happens. And then I notice that some days I will forget to then have a cup of coffee.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And other days when I go grab a cup of coffee first, those often are the days that I miss.
Oh, so
because I get a cup of coffee and then I look at my email and the day is off and running and it's all over.
Right. So did you see the prompt? I will, and the behavior at time and location, right? Or when you stack the habit with a coffee cup. After, and for you is, after I meditate, I will have a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And that's number 3 on the.
If I don't let myself have a cup of coffee until I do much more successful.
That's your reward. I love it. Like, here's your
Or
cup of
look at
coffee.
my email. I can't look at my email.
Then you can't. You have to really, in order not to look at your email, you're gonna have to put your phone
And it
somewhere
used
else.
to be fine until Anthony started sending me emails
6
every
a.m.
morning at 5:45 a.m.
Well, 'cause I'm there at the office.
I know,
That's where I'm-
and so he sends emails, and I get up and go, oh, I gotta look at Anthony's email, and then I gotta have a cup of coffee, and then I don't meditate or exercise, so it's really your fault.
So here's something else I will share with you. So Jenna, who has a little one, I wait until she sends an email with the news clips, and then I start texting her.
Oh.
And so,
That's an auto send email, by the way.
it is?
She doesn't send that.
Oh, no, she sends it from the mayor's office.
She gets it and then automatically forwards stuff. so
Oh,
she
interesting.
sends it or not.
Oh, really?
Look at that.
Well, that doesn't work then.
But for the record, I used to actually draft those emails from scratch and send them out to thousands of people at like 6 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
5 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Grateful to
Right, you
not
did
have to
that,
do
didn't
that
you?
anymore.
That was a hard job.
It is.
Well, I will be mine. I will not send emails until after 8 a.m.
No, just schedule send.
No, I just need to, that's not on you, that's on me.
Oh, so you shouldn't be
Have-
looking.
I shouldn't be.
I should teach you how to do schedule send. You know how to
Well,
do
but
it?
I'm just busy going, I'm
It's just a
at work
little-
at 5:30 and I'm going to town, and it's not to get a
But that's
response.
that is a good, right, but other people, the habit is you look, you respond, right? So you can actually delay sending emails by pushing the little arrow
I do
to
that.
say, send at 8 a.m. and then,
Yeah,
yeah.
when I send, I never send emails I never send emails on the weekend. I try not to,
yeah.
you know.
It appears that I never send emails on the
Appears.
weekend.
I'm the same way.
Okay, I reposted the links. You got them? Okay, I see. Yay. Okay, so we'll take another 2 minutes to write down what it is that we want to track, with what goal, with what intention. And then you can make as many copies of this as you want every month, you know, change up things. I mean, a month of this is a lot of work. And they're little tiny habits, and next thing you know, your life is transformed. I've lost 45 pounds. Mm-hmm.
I'm going the opposite way, and it's because I'm eating stuff I shouldn't
You're
have.
that.
Right? So if I didn't eat the stuff, then I wouldn't be
Yeah.
beating myself up in the morning. And it's like, well, yeah, you had 3 cookies and you had a piece of candy. Of course, the scale's going to be very unhappy with you.
But there you go. If you want to track that, it's a bad habit to break, right? Mm-hmm.
I had 2 cookies tonight.
You like, don't have that third
If
one.
I just don't buy them, then I don't eat them.
Uh-huh.
So these are habits around a specific goal?
Yes, that's the best way to use it, but you can track any habit you want, really, you know, and it's just kind of like what behaviors. The initial month, I always tell people to just track what they do, and then the following month to make adjustments, right? To say, actually, this doesn't work for me. Like you said, I noticed that I am eating 2 to 3 cookies a day, when in reality, that was not a habit I had before. So once you notice, then you can change, right?
Break the habit and just not buy them.
Because then that's that out of sight, out of mind.
Yep.
That's the way to undo it. At least initially, right? Because it's really the mind work.
Later,
Yeah, for later.
I'm gonna take the rest to the kitchen. Volunteers that are here. grab you one.
Okay, does anyone need a little extra time? Very good. So let's start with the people online. Who wants to share what they're going to be tracking? With what intent? You know, what is the goal that you want to get to? Have a long wait time, y'all. Okay, so Sandra shared her goal is to lose weight. So tell us what some of the behaviors that you're going to be tracking will be. The good and the bad, right? Because we have to track both.
So I don't eat much, but I haven't exercised, so I need to go back to exercising more because so I don't know how to track those things, but I haven't like done much since March. Just because I used to go and walk like 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours. There was a situation in March and I stopped going out of my house. And now that I'm able to go out, it's like I have new neighbors and it's like we can't even go to the yard because there's a lot of weird people coming in and out all day and shootings and fights. So it's also I can't go out much. So I'm looking for ways to exercise inside my house. So I'm thinking to go in back to doing yoga or things that I can do inside my house.
So Sandra, I want to point something out to you. And it goes along with kind of what Anthony was describing, that it's building the habit of moving your body, right? So this might lead to losing weight, but it might also not lead to losing weight. You see my point? So it's really important to say, you know, I actually want to move my body, and that's important, right? But also, like, and don't make moving your body and exercising equal to losing weight, because it doesn't always go hand in hand. And I tell you from experience, you know, in that respect. But I think that when I hear you talk, I think what's important to you is moving your body and making sure that you get that exercise, right? So in order to develop a habit, when you know that your environment is not suitable for you just jogging outside, for example, or, you know, going for a walk outside, what are some micro habits that you can incorporate to your daily routine that will make you move your body?
So what I put here, it was to start with 10 minutes yoga every day. To sleep early again, because I feel like that also affects my weight, because I don't sleep as I used to before. So not sleeping well makes me be tired all day. And then I don't have the energy to do the things like yoga or exercise. And I've seen also that I haven't been drinking a lot of water when I used to drink a lot of water. So the things that I wrote here was to sleep more, to drink more water, to clean my whole system, because I know every time I do that, it's like it helps me to lose that extra weight, be more active. ¿Qué más puse?
Be more specific or be more active. Like, I want you to list activities. For example, I know you go to the National Lecture Center office a lot. Do you normally take the elevator or the stairs?
Now I'm taking the elevator. I used to take the stairs, and I don't do that anymore.
But
So
notice, so if you're like, I can't take 4 flights of stairs, start with 1 and then hop in the elevator, right? And then go with 2 sets and then hop in the elevator. And then do 3 and hop in the elevator until you get to 4. I always take the stairs. That is a rule that I have. Even if it's Denver Public Schools and the building, has 14 flights, I will take the stairs. Because it goes back to, like, how do I incorporate movement into my everyday moments? And I also know that you take a lot of ride shares, right? So you could actually ask to be, even if it's half a block away, to be dropped off a little bit earlier for you to get that half a block walk and then get to your destination, right? So those might be some suggestions that might also help you just get that movement in addition to what you described.
and I put also
What do you think?
to start dancing again, because I used to dance a lot, and now I haven't done much this year. Since March, I haven't done much. So and I've been seeing it in my body. I've been gaining weight, like, a lot, and it starts it starts affecting my health, because I start feeling exhausted. I used to have heart problems before, and now I'm afraid that I'm gonna go back to that, because now I can feel my heart, like, it's harder for me to breathe. So I know that's something that I have to really do, lose that weight.
Right, but remember, sometimes losing weight is so big, right? Even if you put a number to it, it feels so big. But it's like, what are those changes that you can do today? Literally, after this call, that one action you can take, right? What can you do tomorrow? What can you do the day after? So this is a really good example. What about, and I don't know who Four Corners Avenue is, but if you want to share what your goal is and what habits you're going to track, we would love to hear from you. You can share it through the chat as well.
I'd ask them to unmute.
I know. You can share it through chat, but yeah. What about you two? What did you come up with? What do you want to track?
I would reach out to community member each day.
Okay, you're gonna take me up on that offer, huh?
Well,
that's a good idea.
I mean, I would.
Yeah.
It is, I mean, when you look at you start small, and then it doesn't feel so overwhelming. And then over time, when you're tracking, I made, 20 connections, right?
Right.
So for habits, I put, either call, coffee, or a Zoom. Like if we're having rather than meeting in person, but still have a virtual meeting. But then in bad habits, I put, and this is where I do some help, I put a busy schedule as an excuse, and then forget.
Okay, so for a busy schedule, I would encourage you to make it the habit you want to break is, I don't want to say not having control of your calendar, because you do, I don't want to.
Just letting other things get in the way.
Yes, okay, so could you build in a buffer to say, I have a 1 hour, in case anything happens during the day, I have this 1 hour to get it done, right? And maybe it's at 11 a.m., right, when the middle of the day
if people were up at 6 a.m., that would be perfect time. But
right, but that's not gonna work. You see why 11 a.m. is like in between the half day where you're like, oh, you know what? Yes, it's important, I'll get it done by the end of the day, but you schedule it for 11 a.m. That's an 11 a.m. task.
Yep.
So then you don't shift your attention from calling that community member, because that's important, that's an 8 a.m. task, right, 9 a.m. task. And no later than 10 a.m. because then people get busy, right? And so, or an afternoon task where you wrap your day, you cannot go home until you call a community member. So for some people that might work, right? I gotta get home, I better build in 10 minutes, you know, but then you might be rushed, so morning might be better. But my point is that if you say reaching out to one community is of utmost importance for me to build this habit, you schedule it on your calendar, right? And you don't let anything touch it. Like, you're gonna be there with a sword, like, sorry, community time, like, this is my one call. I get to, Nate, please don't interrupt me between 8 and 8:15, right? Or something like that. So you also have to help others understand your habits so they can support you, right? Because then they're not gonna be like, oh, 8 a.m., hey, I need to talk to you, Anthony. That's my community time. And know that, right? So communicating what those goals are, and it goes back to creating that environment, which was make it easy. 3.2, it says, prime the environment. Prepare your environment to make future actions easier. So by letting people know around you that this is sacred time, you're going to be able to build that habit, okay? And you're going to stop saying that you're too busy to do it, because you're not too busy to do it. That is the one thing you're going to get done at that time, okay? Does that
I won't
help?
forget because it's on my calendar.
Every day?
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I go to a meeting every morning at 7 a.m., like religiously, so I don't.
And
Be,
when you forget or life does happen, don't say, I'm going to call 2 people tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, that's,
No,
yeah, that's bad.
because it does it, because then you're going to have 30 next thing. You're like, oh, no, I'll just add another one, right? So this is an important point for this, what I'm going to share lastly for this part. And it's focus on one thing. I mean, you have a lot of habits to track, right? Start with one. Even with Sandra, it's like one thing you're going to do today, that same thing you do tomorrow, okay? Once you get really good at that one thing, once you've mastered it and you're doing it well, like, celebrate. Figure out, like, how to make it, like, I did this. Like, for 5 days in a row, I called one community member. Let me share that with the team. Let me share it, you know, as whatever the reward is for you. You don't have to do it, right? But celebrate small wins, like, have a cup of coffee, right? At the end of your small win, have a cup of coffee. In banking, this is the idea that you embed new habits into old habits, okay? So for example, once you get really, really good at calling one community person a day, and you're like, okay, I got this down, then you do the next habit, piggyback to that one, because now you're really good at that, you know? For me, the piggyback habit was, I call it the piggyback, when somebody, you know, jumps on like in Spanish, caballito, is I love podcasts, but they were so time consuming. I listened to them all the time, right? And I was trying to get myself to move my body. So what I did was I will only listen to podcasts when I'm moving my body, right? So I banked it, I piggybacked it to say I will only do this action with something that I know I'm not really excited about, like exercising, but I know I love podcasts, so I better go work out if I were to listen to this podcast, right? And being really strict about it and actually saying, I'm going to do this every day. And if it was only 5 minutes of exercise, I only listened to 5 minutes of podcast, right? If it was 1 hour of exercise, I got 1 whole hour. So it was kind of a nice incentive and a way to embed an old habit with a new habit. So that was really, really exciting and successful. So let me go back to this one. So with that, Brad, what is your habit that you want to create? Or just share a couple. I know you have a whole list.
The one I'm gonna say out loud is that I want to get serious about learning to speak Spanish.
Oh, okay.
Because I've been trying some different things
Mhm.
and haven't stuck with it. And, but I found this app that I like,
Mhm.
called Duolingo.
Okay.
Do you know that one?
Well, I was practicing on it for a time when I was trying to learn Spanish, and then I deleted it from my phone. So
Oh, okay, so that might be a shared goal. And guess what? My daughter actually, she's a middle school student, and we raised her speaking Spanish until she entered school, and then, you know, English kind of takes over. But now in middle school, she found a little friend who is primarily Spanish speaking. And she's like, Mom, she goes, my friend only speaks Spanish. And I said, well, you're sharpening up your Spanish skills. And she goes, yeah. But there are other kids who don't speak Spanish, so we're starting a Spanish club, Mom, to teach the other kids who are Latinos who can speak Spanish because we think that's important to us. This is an 11-year-old talking, right? So I'm going to take that idea and say, could you come up with a way to actually practice with one another, right? Or to share the new information. Doing the math again, if you learn one word every day, all 365 days in a year, right? So it's 365 words. In 2 years,
I mean,
right?
my
You're gonna do a
goal
lot
is
more
that
phrases.
Duolingo does it like these little chapters, you know?
Yeah,
And I have a long commute every day.
right.
So my
Uh-huh.
goal is to do one chapter on my commute
Mm-hmm.
every day.
Yes, and my next level to that one is you gotta practice with community members who speak Spanish,
Oh, yeah.
right? And just say, I'm practicing, let's practice for 5 minutes.
The Mexican soap operas are really good too. You watch TV and watch the Mexican soap operas.
There's if you watch movies at all, movies that I have seen hundreds of times, like all the Disney movies, with my daughters, I actually put them in Spanish and put the captions, and they have to listen to them in Spanish.
Oh.
Because then they're like, oh, that's how you say it. We know exactly what's happening, but now we know how to say it in Spanish. So that's another way to just incorporate into your life. But the hardest part, and I have to tell you, the person who helps me just keep my house tidy, she has convinced herself that she can't speak English. Like, she's like, I'll never learn English. I'm 55 years old and I'll never learn English. If she actually learned to speak English, she would be the supervisor for a large community college, the janitorial crew. But she, in her mind, is holding herself back, right? And that's what I was mentioning early on about the mindset and how important it is to not just say, I'm going to create an atomic habit. I'm going to, go with it. You have to actually believe that it's possible to do it. Otherwise, it becomes a dream that will never get accomplished, right? So, but isn't that interesting? Because you have a very different attitude, and I wanted to share that because I thought, wow, that's, look at Sandra. Did you see her offer? Oh, you can't see it up there. It says, I help you with Spanish and you help me with English.
Deal.
Deal. Sealed. Yeah, and same thing, Sandra. You have to actually just continue practicing. So whenever you say, I'm really bad at something, all it means is you haven't developed the full skill set. So what habit are you going to use, right? If it's writing every day, if it's speaking every day for a certain amount of time, right? All those things help you become better. And that really is the wisdom of aging, right? That you have had so many years to practice these things that you tend to be better at them than people who are younger, because just by the sheer nature of age, right? In terms of the years that have passed. Okay, so couple of review items. Let me go back to this slide. Okay. So today, we really talked about the importance of creating small habits to help you achieve long-term changes. As you notice, anyone can do this. Your kids can do this, your community members can do this, your parents can do this. My goodness, my parents, I've had to really work with them on this one. And they can actually take action right away. It's not something that you have to wait until you're older or you wait until you're retired to do this, right? It can be applied to any aspect of your life, and then you can also teach others how to change their behaviors with these tools. Oftentimes, people say, my New Year's resolution will be to do this, this, and that. I'm telling you, you don't need to wait around for New Year's. You can do something tonight to actually start this change. And then in 3-4 months, you're going to tell us, I've made all this progress, just as I was sharing with my weight loss. It really has been that, where it has been tiny habits that have changed, new beliefs that I've created, right? And a lot of the belief that I can actually do it. And the next thing you know, the result of that was all these pounds started coming off. And now I can move my body better, I feel better, and even my skin is different. So the results you're going to get are long-lasting. It's easy to achieve results because you're doing something every single day. Even if you're not good at it, that tiny little progress will make you get better. And these small changes are doable, right? Anybody can do them. So remember, you have to focus on one thing at a time. You have to get to mastery. You have to celebrate your wins. And you have to be sure to bank your wins with other habits you want to keep modifying, okay? So I'm going to leave you with, reminding you that all of you have access to coaching, you know, and part of coaching really is this. It's really helping you think through what it is that you want to change and helping you see all the roadblocks that you're creating in your own brain. And what coaching does is really say, you know what, this is just your thinking. How do we break it up? What kind of results do you want to achieve? And then how do you want to make that happen? And it takes action to do it. Yeah, but you have the power to create a new reality for you and for your community by changing one tiny habit at a time. Okay? Any questions?
Get out of your own way. Which I'm just telling myself that because I really want to learn Spanish, but I've tried so many times and it just does not work. And then you kind of get defeated, but that's
one
it's like this
tiny
swimming
step.
thing too. Like I'm holding myself accountable and I feel better when I do it. Like last week I didn't do it and then I felt bad, but this morning I was like, you're gonna get there, and I did it and I felt great and I'm holding myself accountable. But the Spanish thing is, I mean, as much as I go to Puerto Vallarta 2 or 3 times a year, like I had personal tutors, and it doesn't,
You know,
doesn't stick.
the thought, yeah, but notice the thought you're gonna have to work on is, it's what I call the ladder thought, right? If right now if you're thinking Spanish is so impossible, right? Your ladder thought is, I can learn one phrase every day. Can you learn one phrase every day? Right? So,
You know, I want to be fluent.
oh,
Yeah. see,
right, but what was the topic today? So that is remember the world? It goes back to the world slide. I'm gonna go back to this one, right? You see, learning Spanish as pie in the sky and wishful thinking. So what I want you to think differently is, you start small. What are the easy to do activities, right? For my husband, I don't know if I've ever told you the story that my husband did not speak Spanish when we met. And he is Mexican American. And his parents spoke to him in Spanish until he was 5, but he was born and raised in Rawlins, Wyoming, right? Talk about like not the ideal environment to learn Spanish. So from 5 to the time I met him, 26, his Spanish was like out the door. He understood a lot of things, but the first time he visited my home, it was like a tennis match. He would see my mom, dad, everybody speaking Spanish, and he's like, I want to contribute and I can't. And I said, do you want to learn Spanish? And he's like, I do. And I said, okay, I'm only speaking to you in Spanish from now on. And so I took it took him 7 years to develop fluency. Okay? But how old will you be in 7 years?
62. That's old.
Are you gonna be dead? Hopefully not, right?
Oh, sorry, Brad. Oops, sorry.
Okay, that's exactly, remember the timeline? If it takes you 7 years to learn a language, not only can you learn Spanish, you can learn another 2 or 3 languages before you die at 90, okay?
Yeah.
Or 100.
Right. Somebody put something in the chat.
Okay, that's hilarious. Let me see.
I'm not calling you old, Brad.
It says, from not knowing how to write Spanish, I learned in 3 years. Then I started giving Spanish literature and creative Spanish for 4 years, and that was a way to practice while teaching it. Yeah, a lot of people actually go to a different country and just immerse themselves, even if it's 6 weeks. We used to have a program at Poudre School District when I was a teacher, where the teachers would go over the summer for 6 weeks to Guanajuato, Mexico. And they would actually immerse themselves in the culture for that time, and they would come back actually having conversational Spanish skills, because everything was in Spanish.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah.
So what are strategies to make these habits stick for, like if I want to do this habit, this could take 2 years or 3 years. So what do you do when in month 4 you stop? You forget.
So what do?
You don't.
You start back up.
It happens.
Yeah.
You start back up where you left off. Yeah.
What's the messaging you tell yourself? How do you avoid, I failed, somebody else could do this, but I can't do this? Or how do you avoid the self-shaming
Yes,
in that moment.
You remind yourself you're human, right? So this is what I do every day, right? Because we always mess up. There's always something that we can learn from. Halloween just happened. Guess what I ate, right? I mean, there's like big old candy bags, and I thought, oh, just a couple pieces, right? But then I didn't wait till Monday to say I'm going to start, back up with my habit tracking. I said, okay, I had 5 pieces of candy, and I'm done for the day, right? So from this moment on, I'm back on track. You see, you don't wait until I'm going to start in a month. You just forgive yourself. So, I'm human. Let's get back on it.
Yeah, so how do you avoid not forgiving yourself on a regular basis?
You just have to keep reminding yourself that you're human. And that's another piece and why it's so, think about it.
No,
Sometimes
that's not my question. The question is, how do you avoid?
You don't, you feel it.
Letting those lapses not become more frequent?
It's the habit building, because think about it. How do you remember to brush your teeth every day?
Don't be visible, yeah.
That's the point you want to get at, right? But to get to that, when, like, the little ones, you see, like my 8-year-old, good Lord, we fought the fight with her to actually brush her teeth, and she doesn't care. And I was like, your mouth stinks. So the feedback she's getting, right, is like, okay, fine, I'm going to go brush my teeth. It hasn't become a habit for her, and she's okay with it, right? So we have to remind her about that. So you might want accountability buddies. So if you say, Sandra's a good example, right? If you say, Sandra, every time I see you, I'm going to tell you how many days I've studied Spanish. And then you see her and you'll be like, I haven't done any Spanish this week. Like, Brad, I'm committed to this. So you're going to start today, right after we talk, right? You're going to do a lesson. And there goes your one again, right? So it's not about beating yourself up. It's really about saying, what's it going to take to really push myself through, and how am I going to forgive myself? Weight loss is a really good one. People are like, oh, it's all over. I'm done. But if you really think about it, every single meal is a decision that we get to make. It's a choice we get to make, right? So to put it all on one meal ruining everything makes no sense, right? So it's almost like, feel the feeling. It's like, oh, I messed up. I haven't even thought about this for 5 days, right? That's okay. I'm going to get back on it today. So being forgiving with yourself is critical, because we are our worst critics. We're the ones, like, for real, we're the ones that call ourselves fat and ugly. And I'm like, nobody else would call us that, right? So same thing, I'm dumb, I can't believe I can't learn Spanish. Or it's like, nobody would call you that, but we call ourselves that. It's crazy. Yeah. But it's being human.
Swimming, right? Like, I felt I didn't go, and I just was like, ugh, and I didn't go, and then I felt crappy that I didn't go. And then it's like, okay, today presented itself, and it's like, you were going. And so it just makes a difference, and it goes back to the being intentional with the goal. Like, why am I there? Like, remember the goal. Like,
your why.
If this is a goal that you want to achieve, and then if it's a visible, I think, aspect too, like seeing it visible. I like this tracker, because you can visibly see, you get a check mark if you did.
There you go, Brad, stick it on your window. For that one, you only put that one, the one that you want to make public, just put it there and you check off, and somebody walking by your office, like, Brad practiced Spanish today. Oh yeah, look, 30 days in a row. Wow, that's awesome, right? And they're going to give you that positive feedback, but of course you're doing it for other reasons. What is your why for learning Spanish? I'm curious now.
I think that it's unfair to this community that they have to have, all our meetings are being held in English, and they have to be translated into their native language. And I think it should be both.
How will it make your life better if you spoke Spanish?
I think it would remove a translation barrier between me and the communities around the National Western Center.
Can I offer you another thought as well?
Sure.
So I had the moms at the ranch, right? Both moms, and they both are Spanish speakers, right? And remember, you made a comment that I wish I could understand them so I could really, truly live in the moment right now, because it was just like kind of trying to figure things out, right? So not only would it increase your sense of joy, right, to actually have people who speak Spanish, people who speak English, whomever, right? So it creates this dependency on, my life would be better, and the conversation just as a whole would be better because we could actually understand each other.
The relationships would be more authentic.
Yes,
They would be more, it would be easier, right? Because you don't have to fight through the translation.
Right.
And I'm sure there's lots that is lost in the translation too.
A
Right?
lot.
Yeah.
A lot is lost in translation.
No offense to, Nora and Francisco.
Yeah, but no, even the nuance, you know, the little phrases,
Yeah.
and you'll get to see that, obviously, you know, the first 5, I remember in my own journey learning English, I was able to physically, like, have a conversation with somebody within a year of being in the US, like, where I just didn't feel like every word I would have to stop. By year 3, I was able to I understood things way faster than I actually was able to speak. So that's kind of, you know, I would say understanding. Year 1, I could understand a lot of things. Year 3, I could really communicate. And by year 5, I could actually write and put thoughts together. And by year 7, I was fluent. So it took that long. But my journey was, I came in 3rd grade. That was not till the end of high school, right? If you look at it that way.
So do you think in English, or do you translate Spanish to English when you speak English?
No, I'm speaking to you in English. Like, my thoughts are in English right now.
Yeah.
But if I speak to Nora, I'm speaking in Spanish. Like, my thoughts are in Spanish. So that's like full fluency because I have all aspects of the language. But you can be bilingual and just understand. That's a big, big step. And you can be bilingual and with listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and that's a whole bilingual, and that takes like academic, you know, kind of skill set. Sandra has a question. What if I have 5 different goals? How can I do the micro habits? Why don't you tell me, Sandra, what do you think you should do?
Track each goal.
You can, yeah, you can divide each one, right, into the 5, or have one sheet for each of the goals. Okay, but remember, you don't want to start with 5 sheets. You can write them all down, but pick one. Say, you know what, I'm going to focus on one first. Because it's very, very important for you to develop mastery, to say, I am consistent enough, I got this, right? And mastery might mean, for you, it might mean tracking it for 30 days. It might mean tracking it for 3 months. It just depends, right? Of course, I track a lot of things that I don't even think about anymore because they really have become habits. One that, for me, I really need to work on is I want to write every day, and I don't get myself to actually do that. I want to share stories about my clients and the work that they're doing, and that's the last thing on my list. So I want to actually be more intentional about saying, I'm going to write every day, whether it's, you know, a testimonial, ask for a story, something like that. I just haven't been good at that. And most of my clients have gotten by word of mouth. People know me, and that's how I've gotten business. But now I really need to move to that next level where other people need to know me, but I'm not good at actually writing those stories. So that's my goal, to actually work on that. So that's one thing, right? I'm not going to stop with the weight loss. I'm still going to continue that, but I don't have to track every single moment the way I used to when I first started, you see? So it just depends on what do you think is the hardest, and I would say that one is the one you should be tracking step by step, right? Because then you could see the progress. But I think that just picking the most important one for you is a really important step. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, I hope I inspired you to do something different and have a different way of thinking. And you know how to find me. I'm accessible, and we will finish a little early. Thank you for coming. And Sandra, I guess we have the 2 books, so you get to pick, because para si quieres en español o en inglés, okay? Just let me know, and I'll get it to you.
All right, thank you. Bye, everyone.